been a wild ride, as we've brought you over 100 episodes featuring over 2,000 dashcam videos. We crunched the numbers and found the videos our viewers enjoyed the most, bringing them together into this mega episode. Buckle up and enjoy the most viewed dashcam videos we've ever published. Mark was driving a tow truck, which was pretty convenient considering what he witnessed. The driver of a pickup made a last-minute high-speed exit before briefly losing control and hitting another vehicle. Mark stopped to check on the other driver and to see if he could decipher the pickup's license plate number from his dashcam footage. Thankfully, he was able to provide it to the Minnesota State Patrol. Dennis was driving his Honda Civic down a Texas highway with his girlfriend, who was visiting from Canada, in the passenger seat. Suddenly, a semi-truck merged into the side of them, sending the car spinning out of control. Dennis said it was unfortunate that this happened while his girlfriend was visiting, but he's thankful neither of them were seriously injured. The trucker took responsibility for the collision and said he hadn't seen Dennis's Civic. He asked for a shout out for his girlfriend Jennifer, who flew home as scheduled the day after the collision. Eric sent us this footage from a dashcam in a company semi-truck. Eric told us this truck was being driven by Quincy, who wasn't hurt when an oncoming semi was hit by a hydroplaning SUV, sending it into the temporary median barrier. The impact sent the Jersey barriers sliding into Quincy's lane, where they were struck by a car that had been passing Quincy's Peterbilt. The highway was shut down for cleanup, and Eric told us police responded in under 5 minutes. Nico was driving through Vegas when 3 street racers went flying past him on the highway. Before they could speed off, one sideswiped another vehicle, pushing it into a concrete barrier and sending sparks flying. Instead of stopping, the racing driver then took off. Once Nico recovered from the shock of what had happened, he called 911 and reported what he'd seen. He told us he saw multiple people stop to help the victim, who was able to safely pull over. Sadly, it seems that the driver responsible sped off into the night and was probably never held to account. Matthias was driving his Honda Accord in Royal Oak, Michigan. There was heavy snow, and traffic was starting to pile up on the highway. A Chrysler was going way too fast, and in an attempt to avoid hitting a Cadillac Escalade, the driver overreacted and hit the truck in front of Matthias instead. Matthias never hit the brakes since he knew it wouldn't help, and instead decided to slowly steer in an evasive maneuver. Once he'd cleared the Chrysler, he hit the gas and steered to the right to gain traction and was able to dodge the Ford Focus.
Alright.
We agree with your passengers, Matthias. Nice driving.
You guys okay?
Yes.
Nelson was driving down a California highway when he encountered a CHP traffic brake, which is when a patrol vehicle drives back and forth slowly across all lanes of a highway to slow down traffic for an incident up ahead. Nelson and most other drivers noticed the sea of red brake lights ahead and came to a stop, but one driver behind Nelson wasn't paying attention and rear-ended another vehicle at highway speed. The vehicle that was initially hit was pushed past Nelson and into several other vehicles. Thankfully, Nelson wasn't involved in the collision. He was late for work, so didn't stay, but he hopes everyone else was okay. This emitter was headed to his brother's house. Another driver turned across 4 lanes of traffic and into the path of our submitter's Jeep, causing $22,000 in damage. The Jeep had to be towed away, but the other vehicle was still drivable. Amazingly, the other driver blamed our submitter for the fact that she'd pulled in front of him while he was moving at 55 miles per hour. Unsurprisingly, the police found her at fault, and her insurance provider paid for repairs and a rental. Tony was waiting in a left turn lane for his light to turn green so he could make a U-turn. When it did, a pickup driver in the oncoming turn lane ran his red light to go straight. Tony had been watching for anyone who might make a right on red and cut him off, and he hadn't been expecting the pickup truck to go straight from a turn lane, let alone run a red light. The security guard driving the company pickup claimed Tony had been at fault and that he'd had a green light. Even when Tony told him he had a dash cam, he refused to admit to any wrongdoing.
lights. I have it on video.
When the police arrived, they were all ready to cite Tony for making an improper U-turn, until his wife arrived with a laptop so he could show them his dashcam footage. They then immediately cleared him of any fault and commended him for having a dashcam. His insurance claim is now pending, and he's waiting to see if his Hyundai Santa Fe will be repaired or if it's totaled. Ryan was driving his Nissan Leaf when a young driver ran a red light that had been red for 20 seconds, T-boning Ryan at around 50 miles per hour. The car's safety systems activated, cutting off power from the traction battery. Ryan's wife was knocked unconscious, and a Good Samaritan helped them both out of the car. They live only a few blocks from where this happened, so one of the responding police officers gave them a ride home. Ryan then started the insurance process, which went smoothly. In fact, they got such a good deal on the settlement that Ryan actually made a nice profit off his car. He used the money to replace it with his dream car, a Tesla Model S P85D. Now that's an upgrade. By the way, see this liquid on the windshield? Ryan's wife had been trying Vietnamese milk tea for the first time that day, and she really liked the few sips she had, but she hasn't been able to stomach it since. Michael had just gotten coffee from a local convenience store. When he left the parking lot, he ended up behind a Buick Century. While Michael was looking to the left to check for traffic, the Buick driver stopped at a yield sign for no reason. He hit the Buick at about 20 miles per hour, denting the rear bumper cover and taking out his own front bumper cover and headlight. The Buick driver told him at the time that he wasn't injured. Later, the Buick driver claimed he was injured and tried suing Michael for $500,000 in damages. His insurance provider eventually settled with him for $15,000 to avoid further litigation. This submitter was headed home after filling up his tank. As he pulled out onto the road, the passenger of a pickup truck turning the other way flipped him off for no reason. So he returned the favor, admittedly not the best move. A while later, he noticed the same pickup racing up behind him. The driver overtook him before slamming on the brakes, bringing them both to a standstill. Then, the driver got out and started inviting our submitter to fight him. Instead of accepting this invitation, he drove around the deranged man to get away. When he did, the pickup driver slapped his side mirror, shattering the glass, cracking the cover, and chipping the passenger window. Our submitter pulled in front of him and took a quick video of his license plate with his phone. The pickup driver must have realized that he'd committed a crime because he reversed away as our submitter filmed him. Thanks to the dashcam footage, it didn't take long for our submitter to find the guy and take him to court. He never once showed remorse, repeating that this all could have been avoided if only our submitter hadn't flipped him off, as if he then had no choice but to react with violence. Needless to say, this excuse didn't work with the judge. The attacker has to pay our submitter almost $600 to fix his mirror, which is actually less than the total repair bill. I guess our submitter felt generous, even though the other guy doesn't feel bad at all. The driver of a Dodge minivan caused a 5-vehicle collision when they ran a red light and got hit by a Toyota SUV. That impact sent the minivan head-on into a Mini Cooper, which was then shoved backward into Angel's Honda Accord. The 5th vehicle involved was a Chevy pickup that was barely damaged when the Mini Cooper hit it while spinning. The other 4 vehicles were all totaled, and Angel got a check for $24,000 to replace his Accord. The minivan driver was found responsible for all damages. Thankfully, nobody was seriously injured. Angel told us he's thankful we are all alive and kicking. He also asked us to please encourage everyone to get a dash cam. Ryan was heading to visit his parents after work one day when the driver of the white Subaru in front of him didn't realize a driver ahead was stopping to wait for oncoming traffic before making a left turn. Without enough time to slow down and stop, the Subaru driver veered into the oncoming lane before colliding with the Ford Escape the other driver had been waiting for in the first place. Ryan called 911 and first responders arrived 3 minutes later. The couple in the Ford Escape were actually his parents' neighbors, and Ryan provided them with a copy of his dashcam footage. He caught up with them a week later, and they told Ryan the footage had been very useful for their insurance claim. Simon was headed home from work when a Porsche came flying up behind his Audi Q3. The Porsche driver tried to blame the sun for blinding her, but that doesn't explain why she was driving so fast. Simon has moderate whiplash and both vehicles were totaled. A few minutes after the crash, her mother and friends showed up with a tow truck and tried to quickly get Simon's info so they could leave. Simon knew something wasn't right, so he made them wait for the police, and they were not happy. When the cops arrived, they gave the driver of the Porsche a breathalyzer test. We don't know what the results were, but we do know that she was immediately arrested. Simon wanted to shout out everyone who stopped to help, especially an off-duty cop who kept him from having a panic attack. He also said he's thinking about replacing his Audi with a Tesla. Dan is a streetcar operator in the Czech Republic. He was making one last route to help out after a big accident, but he forgot to check the position of the track while entering an intersection. Luckily, nobody was hurt. Dan admits this accident was entirely his own fault and he was sure he'd get fired. Instead, he was allowed to keep his job as long as he paid for the damage. It cost him about $3,000 US. Fortunately, his insurance provider covered most of the repair costs. He wanted us to remind everyone that streetcars take a long time to stop. Even going only 30 miles per hour, it takes about 250 feet for a streetcar to come to a complete stop. A pickup driver failed to secure his U-Haul trailer and it came off the hitch while he was driving down the highway. Eventually, the safety chains failed and the trailer was sent rolling into the median barrier before flipping over. Thankfully, the trailer was completely empty. Juanito was driving in Chicago when the driver of a black GMC SUV pulled into his lane. He flashed his high beams at her, but she didn't budge, so he just went around her. Evidently, this outraged the GMC driver, who proceeded to follow Juanito, prompting him to turn onto a side street to avoid a confrontation. The GMC driver followed Juanito anyway by reversing and turning down the same street, then cut off and brake checked him. When he finally got around her before a traffic light, she drove up onto the sidewalk to get next to him. She proceeded to flip him off and yell at him, which he couldn't understand through his windows, while another young woman in the back seat waved a baseball bat at him. She then tossed a drink out of the window before driving off. Juanito ended up following her inadvertently since he was headed the same way, and she brake checked him one more time before he swerved around her and drove away. He drove to a nearby police station and waited a few minutes in the parking lot before heading home, just in case.